I'm going to go ahead and get started super quickly. Just to start things off, if you're looking to enable closed captioning for this event, we have a slide that will help you know where to find that. But basically, you can click on the captions icon. If it's not available, you might need to click the more icon first. From the icon, you'll choose show subtitle. If you're looking to enable live transcripts, you can click on the closed captions icon and choose view live transcript. Also, when we distribute this video call a little bit later, we'll have it fully subtitled and distributed soon. We have an agenda, I believe, a slide for that. Matt, if we can go to that super quickly, please. One more, thank you so much. Our agenda for today, some introductions of who's on the call, housekeeping, and then we're going to talk through with Matt and Josh Green, flexible crawl strategies, parity crawls, scalability, internal linking projects at scale, comprehensive SEO reporting, and then save some time for questions and answers at the end. So quick introductions for this call today around SEO Power-Ups for 2024. Joining from Lumar, we have Matt, one of our senior solutions consultants, and myself. My name is Josh. I'm a customer success manager. And Matt and I get to work with excellent users at incredible clients that Lumar gets to partner with. One of those is on the call with us today, Josh Green from Clutch. He's a senior SEO manager who has worked in marketing for just under coming up on 17 years this year. So Josh, thanks for joining us for this conversation today. Matt, we can go to the next slide. Just a couple housekeeping things. First, for any questions that may come up during the conversation, feel free to throw those into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. At the very end of this call, there will be an option to provide feedback. It takes about a minute to complete. Super helpful for us. If you enjoy these webinars and want to see more of them or have ideas for have some ideas for future webinars that we could do, we love to get your feedback on that. And lastly, this recording will be shared out in a few days across our channels, but you can always find it on our YouTube channel. Before we get to Matt and Josh, we have a poll question. The question is, which is the single biggest challenge you predict will affect your technical SEO strategy this year? We should have some results for that shortly. Comprehensive SEO reporting, number one. Scalability, 2. Close to that, flexible crawl strategies, internal linking at scale, and parity crawls. Awesome. Thanks for voting. Thanks for letting us know. I'm going to hand it over to Matt Hill for the next area.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it. So as you guys saw on the agenda, we want to break up this conversation into some of the top areas when we talk to our clients, really seem to be kind of top of mind for where issues are played out over the course of the year. What are the top things facing, top challenges in the upcoming year? And deciding how to set your crawl cadence, particularly if you're using a software like Lumar, to get the most out of your budget, to get the most out of your crawl strategy, to consistently be able to see trends in their data. In this particular topic, we think that there's 5 core areas for how to think about crawl strategy. First is, really just pretty simple and straightforward, and looking at your crawl by site section. If you're a first-time person looking at legacy technical debt across a particular property, it probably is going to make the most sense to do some type of comprehensive crawl, which covers a good breadth of your site content. Once you have that audit, it's not going to be necessary moving forward to consistently crawl an entire site or even the largest sections of your site moving forward. It make much more sense to focus your crawl focusing on sections of your site that you care most about, whether these are top category pages for an e-commerce environment. If we know that the blog is a section of the site that gets consistently updated with regularity, that may be a section to focus on for regular crawls. Identifying which are the sections of the site that are just touched most often and really speak to your bottom line is going to be very critical to that crawl strategy. Another way to kind of remove bloat and focus on areas that are most important is to identify which crawl sources are most obvious. So with Lumar, for instance, we actually provide the opportunity not just to have a web crawl as part of the crawl audit, but also pull together 6 other crawl sources, including backlink data, analytics, log file data. So there's opportunity from a crawl strategy perspective to ensure that, okay, we want to focus our crawls on areas where we don't, have to kind of see consistent, fresh data. Maybe in the case of backlink data, for instance, we know our historical index of backlinks. So we can maybe reserve that source for a main crawl. And when we do our regular crawls, our more consistent crawls, we don't need to include backlinks because that's, we're aware of those orphan pages. Some of the clients we work with are in very high, fast-moving paced industries. We think publishing, we think e-commerce, we think areas like in finance where there's consistent content being updated every day. So another basic strategy here is just focusing on a crawl strategy that focuses on release pace. You know that you're going to be crawling or if content is being released daily. Okay, that's obviously going to take up a lot of crawl bandwidth. Let's focus on which segments, maybe understanding templates that are focused on a daily cadence versus maybe parts of your site that are updated, quarterly or annually in some cases. So I think by release pace is another great strategy. Also we look at site level. In Lumar, we have the capability to go very many levels deep within your site structure, starting from a starting place like your homepage, and then going every click further into your site, obviously is going to uncover new things and focuses that you may want to prioritize in your strategy. But maybe after level 6, level 7 in some industries, this may not be as important to go deeper into the site structure. So looking at a crawl, focusing on levels that, again, are going to see the most frequent updates is probably going to be the best strategy in that regard. And then the other idea, on a similar vein to release pace, is just by schedule. You can also set a crawl strategy that ensures that you're always focusing on having fresh data from within the crawl. There's nothing worse than running a crawl, using crawl credits to account for crawls that there's actually no change between the 2 crawl dates that you've done. So you can try to find a schedule that also really combines a lot of the focus areas that we're talking about to ensure that the data being shown in your audits is actually reflective of changes. Always having data reflected to understand different aspects of your site that could be impacted by different stakeholders touching the property. One of those strategies that I think we want to dive into specifically is the focus of parity crawls. So crawling a section of your site, comparing it crawl over crawl. And we want to talk about some of the types of parity crawls I think we'd like to hone in on. First type of parity crawl is just doing a crawl of mobile versus desktop content. It's always good to do these types of analyses to understand how things are rendered across different devices. This can be done in Lumar using a variety of different user agents, updating the viewport to really kind of see the nuances. In that same vein, we also think about just doing a standard crawl, focusing on pre-render versus post-render. Seeing that difference of the raw HTML and then after the JavaScript has been loaded on the page is also going to be very impactful, I think, to understanding those nuances. And we're going to get into that in a little bit in terms of what those reports actually look like. And then as the graph here speaks to, the focus of what I've termed it as micro crawls. So focusing on that comparison of site sections. But in this case here, we're maybe thinking about a use case where we're comparing a crawl in a staging environment, pre-production, versus a live environment. As things are potentially changing in the live environment, but we want to make sure that we're going hand in hand with those changes, maybe potentially as we're getting ready for an upcoming migration project, we want to keep those that knowledge to understand the differences between the live site and the production site to be understandable. So we can definitely report on it accurately and adjust. And I think Josh has a really good use case from.
Yeah, I was working on a migration actually following an acquisition on a company that I worked for in the past. And the migration was from the UK site to a US based site that was opening up a UK business line. So the idea was that they were going to essentially migrate the entire old UK site onto the new site. I was crawling the UK site and did representative crawls, only around 100 to 200 pages, to make sure that things were being carried over correctly. All the content was showing up the way it should. The meta tags were being carried over, and did that 4 or 5 times between the live site in the UK and the staging site. And one of the last things I did post crawl between the two was just to run that parity crawl. This one was actually there to on the live site and the now on production site on the US version. And that last crawl crawled the UK site. And what I expected to see was canonicals and or redirects pointing to the new destination pages in the US on the new site, and everything between the two being exactly the same after that. Outside of those redirects being in place, everything was the same. What I discovered was that instead of being completely in parity, someone in marketing just before migration had decided to dynamically append UTM codes to all of the redirects as people visited the old site, or as Google came through to the old site. So, which in itself isn't too bad a thing, as long as you have the canonical set on the destination site correctly. What we discovered was that it's something that we couldn't see on the UAT version because we were using a URL list at that point, was that the canonicals were being dynamically created. So we were creating dozens of versions of the exact same page during that migration. And frankly, catching it quick using those parity crawls saved us a ton of downside. We still lost a little bit of traction because it took some time to fix, but boy, that could have been a major issue, having dozens or in some cases maybe as many as a couple hundred versions of each page. So yeah,
sounds like a perfect use case, Josh. And thank you for giving that as an example of, when we were talking about the types of crawl setups and having that schedule in place where you are consistently looking at fresh data, crawl over crawl. The fact that you said that you had been looking at the list crawl URLs, which generally you're speaking to a static set of URLs and comparing them, but then having that reference point of the other crawls to see, well, even if we are using a static crawl in this one, we should still be able to see changes from our other project that we have running. We can see that something is off here. So again, having this data always running can clearly save lives, or in this case, save SEO visibility. So the next thing that we wanted to focus on here is another example around, I think, kind of adding to Josh's point around canonicalization and how we can use a use case in real life to address this and speak to this in this call here. around canonicalization. So just looking at a Lumar project, we can see for one of the sites we were reviewing that this client has 195 canonical links pointing in to a particular page. That canonical page that we're speaking to has a deep rank of 0.99. And I want to kind of take a step back and explain what deep rank is. Deep rank is Lumar's internal page weighting from a score of 0 to 10, essentially showing how much equity is being given to these pages, how much weight is being allocated from your backlinks, from your internal page weight is being passed through. Those 195 canonical pages, so the pages that are referencing this page that has a deep rank of 0.99, well, they all held domain rank, deep rank scores of anywhere from 0.04 to 0.37. So these are just fractions of what the overall deep rank of 99 is. 0.99 isn't a super high deep rank score at all. It's pretty low on the totem pole when you're talking about out of 10. However, because all of these pages, the additional 195 are able to be essentially followed throughout the web crawl, they're able to be found by Google. This is essentially a waste in crawl budget. The page that's a deep rank of 0.99 could easily be somewhere above 1, maybe even be above 2. And that could have a net positive effect of increased impressions, increased traffic, and not wasted crawl budget. So this is a case where just having that comparison and understanding what's available could potentially save traffic. And especially when you're looking at this data right hand in hand with your impression data and your click data, this could be extremely powerful for brands and something that is a lower hanging fruit that people don't think about from an internal site optimization perspective. The next point we want to speak to is scalability. I think there's a lot of things that can be scaled in SEO, but particularly we talked about the use cases of site migrations being a common instance. This is something we talk a lot about with clients. In Lumar, we have our feature of URL rewriting. As we all know, the staging environment is never going to be a mimic one-to-one of your production or your live environment for that fact. So we talk about being able to treat those staging URLs and apply a naming convention that matches what the expected URL nomenclature is going to be on the live site is just helpful for really seeing a true one-to-one comparison versus seeing the URLs in staging and in the live environments or the higher environments as different. But that's just one use case for URL rewriting. There's a lot of other things that you can do as well, such as at scale, ignoring those unwanted URLs from the crawl to preserve those crawl credits as part of that crawl strategy. Also, finding those broken URL paths that speak to malformed URLs, missing trailing slashes, maybe inconsistency between secure HTTPS protocol and non-secure HTTP protocol, understanding the breadth of that issue, and then using the rules, whether it's using regex or XPath, to define what the new URL structure should be, updating these in bulk. It's also another way to exclude parameterized URLs or maybe unnecessary follows. A good example there potentially could be if you're running a crawl on a site with dynamic user-generated content. And we all have, from time to time, have seen when users will post links that are irrelevant, whether it's an external link outside the domain, or if it's a link maybe to a personal upload page, for instance, as an example. These are not pages that we would want Google to follow necessarily, particularly within a comment section, but they're also going to add to crawl budget and bandwidth. So, understanding those types of interactions and then looking out for that type of content to flag and ignore in the crawl. The next thing is what we were alluding to before around the power of those comparison crawls. And we at Lumar really love this particular report in the re-render comparison. These charts here represent just like some of the different comparisons we can do within Lumar. Some of the things that are very important are, and what Google would like to see in most cases, is that when the user is experiencing content from a desktop to a mobile environment, that content ideally should be as close as a one-to-one as possible. But as developers, as SEOs, we all know that that's always not going to be the case, especially as we are changing screen sizes, changing the interactivity of how users engage with content on different devices. Things are going to need to be moved around and shifted as part of the layout shift. But with that, what types of changes are we seeing? What types of changes are we seeing that are going to impact potentially the relevancy of that page, such as maybe a decrease in word count or a decrease in the number of links that are on the page, or even in some cases when the canonical is served maybe only in one version. Maybe it's only served in the render version and not served in the HTML version. Is there an instance potentially where some JavaScript is sitting below that attribute or sitting above that attribute rather, and it's potentially breaking the page? It's potentially not even serving the canonical altogether. These have been some really interesting conversations that we've had with clients here at Lumar around how this report has actually saved them in a lot of ways to issues that they haven't really thought about previously. And I think, Josh, you talked about this as well as one of your findings.
Yeah, this actually taught me to trust Lumar's reporting over some of my other tools. The Lumar had identified two canonicals, duplicate canonicals on a single page within the code, all at the same time. One in the head and one in the body. And the one in the body was slightly different than the one in the head, so we're kind of sending mixed signals to Google. The issue I had with the Lumar report was that none of my other tools were showing the issue. All of them showed a single canonical, and that included like view source. It wasn't an issue. I actually reached out to the Lumar support. Josh Eden wasn't the person I reached out to at that point. It was somebody else, but they handed me off to their tech support, and the tech people did a video and showed me where it was showing up in the both of them. And what it turned out was that I should have been using DevTools to look at it. And so what that taught me was two things. One, trust Lumar's reporting, and two, use DevTools to make sure that you're looking at what the rendered version is. The view source, of course, is pre-rendered. So what was happening was in the JavaScript itself, and was going to cause us issues down the road. So you'll notice canonicals are a theme with me. They always seem to pop up as a problem for me.
I don't think you're the only one, Josh, but yeah, I think it's so interesting, that highlight. I think about myself early in my SEO career, before really diving into the world of JavaScript, understanding post-render, how, I found myself at that time very much honing in on the raw HTML. This is even going back into the days where meta keywords were still relevant, and looking at that in that section of the site, but totally forgetting that there's a whole world of post-render and the changes that can occur throughout that process. And I do think you really provided a really good insight around kind of at Lumar, how we think about that from a consultative perspective, helping our clients feel more comfortable in the code in tools such as Chrome Web Dev tools. So I definitely resonate with that example. Another thing that I wanted to speak to is around page sampling. This can kind of tie into site sections when we were talking about crawl strategy, but one of the powers, as one of the people in our professional services team says, one of the superpowers of Lumar is being able to do things such as see and parse data at scale very easily. Page sampling is a great feature for this. in the screenshot that we have here on the page, we're taking a sample of products from an e-commerce site and just showcasing that, hey, for all of your PDP pages, that potentially, if you have customers that are navigating your site using like filtering options, for instance, there are a lot of different variations of those URLs that can be constructed. In fact, I'm on e-commerce sites regularly where it seems like the variations, the combinations of URLs that can be created by different PDPs and the filtering options can be endless. Dynamic URLs are a great thing for user experience, but from a crawling perspective, it can really bloat up your audit. And particularly if there are other site sections you want to focus on and understand issues, it may be important to sample those URL sets to try to mitigate and really preserve your crawl budget. Whereas, so using page sampling, you can see here, you can choose the rule that you want to create, whether it's a section or using regex to create a parameter, the rule, and then let the crawl know that they only want to focus on a percentage of those URLs to really get the most out of your crawl. I am seeing a question come up in the Q&A that I also just want to be able to answer. Can we set priority in a crawl? After page grouping, if we set a crawl at 10%, after that 90% of the URL won't crawl. Can we set priority like these can be included in the 10%? So the best way to do this, in Lumar, and thank you for the question, would be through the parity crawls like we've established, using our crawl restrictions in step 3 of the setup process. You can set different restrictions, the timing of the crawls and the percentage that you want to focus on. However, setting the crawl prioritization, so doing a sample at that time, it could be a little tricky. So it's really more important to kind of focus on micro crawls and to make sure that sample set's included. And that's something that is really important with Lumar as well. We don't credit you or charge you for the amount of domains that are being focused on or the amount of projects that are being set up. It's all going to be focused on the number of URLs crawled. So this is something that will allow you to really do as many types of projects and parity crawls as you need to set up. You'll have that amount of customization. This one we want to focus here is going to be on internal linking projects at scale. So one example that I wanted to call out from another site that we're reviewing is the visualizations that we find in Data Explorer. As an SEO, I've spent a lot of time in tools like SEO tools, the plugin in Excel, in business intelligence tools, parsing data, shifting different data sets. But while those tools are extremely powerful, it's also important to note that Lumar wants to give you as much function as you can do using our reports. Everything in our platform is GraphQL API driven, so it can be pushed into whatever platform really you guys feel comfortable with to evaluate the data. But Data Explorer is a particularly powerful tool because it allows you to do multiple dimension viewing across any particular crawl, break site data out by things such as HTTP status code, levels we were talking about before, all the different types of segmentation offerings that we have. And then also just look at it against really any metric that we have in the platform. Particularly, I think this is very helpful for internal link analysis on the fly to understand where a lot of the equity is being passed from first level subfolders, secondary, tertiary. You'll be able to see really where you can focus as you really can understand using a metric such as deep rank, where a lot of the allocation is being passed along. In this example here, you can see that we have the property that's being focused on the left. the URL count in each of those first level subfolders, as well as the links in count, links out count, and then deep rank. Links in and links out is just referring to your internal links pointing inward or outward from a particular section. But you can see on row number 3 for the subfolder daily dish that the deep rank average is 0. It is not probably too surprising in this instance because we can see that the links out count is much higher than the links in count. Now, just doing a little bit of research and understanding the property, this is a section of the Atlantic, which is actually it's a defunct section. It's not currently updated with the new content that's coming out in the recent years. In fact, the last updated content, as I was diving into the folder structure, was going to be something that was focused in 2011. That being said, though, looking at those URLs that were still active and are still live on the site now that are just not internally linked, you can also see that they're still garnering traffic. They have garnered backlinks and still accrued backlinks over time. So this is an opportunity for SEOs at the Atlantic to potentially figure out how to incorporate these legacy articles back into the site infrastructure. It's an easy way just to identify from that deep rank what makes the most sense to bring them in. There's another feature within the site that has all the archival content year after year, and this could be a great place to bring these pages back into the HTML architecture and again, serve users that have over time, because of the backlinking and the impressions shown, have found this content to be useful. Just want to dive in. Another question has been asked. What are you guys using to find internal linking opportunity? Hopefully my example, Shivam, just kind of spoke to that a little bit. Is there an automated way to update internal linking for a website with pages more than 50,000? Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think this is something that can be absolutely focused on in the crawl setup. Whether we want to focus those internal linkings from a fresh index perspective or a historic index perspective, we can always continue to find those. In fact, you can even set up crawls that just do comparisons of your web crawl against your backlink data. At Lumar, we partner with Majestic SEO to inform our backlink data and keep our indexes fresh.
So I'd also want to input there that if you're interested in the internal linking, which is actually something that literally every site I've ever worked on needs help with. I don't know a site that doesn't, honestly, wouldn't benefit from some help there. Go back and watch the webinar that Lumar did with Christina Azarenko, I think. Christina, I hope I'm not murdering your name, with Marketing Syrup. She did a fantastic webinar about internal linking. And as a side note, that she has a plugin on her website that's fantastic. It's actually my go-to SEO plugin. It's on Marketing Syrup site. So yeah, that was fantastic. Her webinar was great. So going back a little bit, talking about the hreflang analysis here, which is a fantastic tool. Back to that site that I mentioned that I migrated. One of the UK was not the first site that they'd done this with. They'd actually purchased an Australia one, and the Australian site as well, and migrated it too. And they built a Canadian version of the site. Now, I'm going to make a whole lot of SEOs cringe here. Both the AU, CA, and UK versions were entirely duplicative of each other. When I started, that's how it was built. The UK version was coming online. The AU and CA versions were already there. The AU, Australian, Canada versions, and the US version didn't seem to be actually causing any problems. Everything seemed to be going okay. Google seemed to understand what was going on with the sites. I knew it was going to be a problem, and I knew that was not the best way to do internationalization, but that's how they'd chosen to do it, and I could not get buy-in to change it. What ended up happening after the UK site version of the site launched. It was .com/ENUS, .com/ENAU. Once the UK version of the site launched, Google started having some issues. We started seeing some traffic ranking issues, and I knew probably what was going on, at least to a certain extent, but I couldn't sell it at scale. I actually went to Lumar immediately to hope that I could find it. What I did find was that what was happening was Google was serving a mismatched version of the of the pages. A person in the U.S. searching for lodging near Yosemite in California would possibly be getting the Australia version, the ENAU version, or the UK version of the page instead of the ENUS version. And what we were seeing was that after I'd identified that, we went back and looked, we were seeing pages coming in and out of the index sort of frantically. Sometimes we wouldn't have any pages ranking at all. What Lumar was able to do with that was show me at scale where the problem was. And it eventually, within a couple of weeks, unfortunately, of identifying it, I got buy-in to get things changed. It took months to get it changed because of how embedded everything was, but it was that ability to show the engineers and the C-suite, which is where I was getting most of the pushback from, that there was an issue that needed fixed, and it needed fixed quickly, or we were going to really start losing steam. And if you've ever worked in corporate Fortune 500 level stuff, you know that getting buy-in from C-suite and engineers is key. And Lumar has helped me do that quite a few times. This one was probably the worst and the biggest.
Buy-in, that's a good topic to kind of cover, and we'll talk about that as we get into our comprehensive SEO reporting coming up. But it definitely is a challenge that I think we talk to clients all the time across organizations, that different folks are touching the web properties and how to do that effectively. I wanted to circle back lastly on hreflang analysis here in internationalization. Lumar has just released some new reporting that we think that addresses and solves a lot of the challenges that international SEOs face when addressing scale, particularly the language adaptation of our platform via our CLI to be able to do cross comparisons of the targeted on-page language against the hreflang attributes that are actually set. So we at Lumar are very proud of this platform and this particular product because it's extremely helpful, and everyone we've spoke to on it is already seeing the value, as well as the new other reports that we cover, such as all non-reciprocated hreflang links and all the hreflang combination reports as well. The sources overlap reporting is also something that is going to be pretty powerful, I think, just to be able to understand really those gaps in orphan pages. It really is going to help answer the question of how much opportunity do I have to ensure that my pages can be found in multiple sources. You know, we think about how pages are found. You have your sitemap, you have the web crawl, you have log file analysis, you have backlinks. But each one of those sources is kind of specific to different audiences, while the site maps and how URLs are targeted in each of those files, that's something that's very specific from a search bot perspective. It has a benefit to crawlability and to eventually indexation, but really it's there just to help search bots better understand your site architecture. Web crawl is also obviously scanned by bots, but also it's the core goal of a good crawl strategy and the internal linking strategy is really just for the user's benefit. It's the benefit of how easy it is to jump from different levels of your site and then also be able to get back effectively to pages where you were before. And as I was talking about with Josh yesterday, backlinks are another way, obviously, pages and sites can be found, but that shouldn't be the ideal way. As the two previous ways I mentioned should be the core goal. But where backlinks, I think, really hold the highest value in terms of relevancy and domain authority is also going to be a validation that the content that's been served actually served a good purpose for users. It's validation that the content was useful. So you have to think about these crawl sources in that capacity. And we have to think about how making sure that our content is found in multiple sources across the site. So using the sources overlap reporting, you can understand where there are gaps in that, whether it's pages that are only found via backlinks or pages that are only found in the sitemap source. What is that overview? Where are the easiest areas of opportunity to clean that up and do that overlap comparison? Whether we're doing it at the site level or we're focusing on specific segments of our site, as you can see in the dropdown on the right side, that really can help drive immediate value for clients looking to clean up internal link structure. Orphan pages also can be a great way to not only find content that's been kind of lost in the shuffle of different site migrations or different projects that happen over time, but also uncover issues that also may have been swept under the rug. I think, Josh, orphan pages are something you found to be helpful as well in your auditing.
It's actually, I keep using the site migration as an example. There was a lot of things that went wrong with it, or it highlighted a lot of issues. Hopefully this one will be a little bit quicker though. We had an issue on the live site, and everybody has them if the site's been around for a while, with redirect chains. Lumar identifies those for you. I was actually having an issue getting buy-in to fix them on the US site, but what I did pre-migration was went to the UK site and pulled the crawl using the Majestic URLs and discovered a lot of redirect chains. That site had actually been around longer than the one here in the US had, and a lot of redirect chains were in place. And what we ended up doing was I pulled that report, showed it to our engineers. They fixed it pre-migration, reduced those redirect chains, got it down to one redirect pointing incoming URL to the final destination URL, and that actually, I believe, and it's hard to prove with anything with SEO, but I believe that helped really salvage some of that link equity that would have been lost during the migration by just shortening everything up. And it also got them to fix the internal redirect chains that were already there. So, or the redirect chains were on the US version of the site. So it was a fantastic tool. I like this. Only way that I have access to the Majestic links is through Lumar. So
I know we're coming towards the end of the presentation here, but the last thing I just really wanted to cover off was kind of on that notion that we talked about around buy-in and have true comprehensive reporting. The audit is a great place in our crawler just to be able to understand that legacy tech debt that's been built up over time and set your SEO strategy for an upcoming year, just 2024, or subsequent quarters when you know that certain releases are going to happen. But when we talk about reporting, it's not just something that happens retroactively. We also want to be reactive and proactive around how issues are being flagged and then the communication structure for that. In Lumar, our capability to test issues that us as SEOs care deeply about, broken canonicals, hreflang issues, broken internal links, and even redirect loops. I mean, these are things that are going to obviously impact our job and the KPIs that we've been set to do. But these are also things that aren't like in a silo. We need the support of content writers. We need the support of engineers and developers who are going to enact these remediations. And so as a property, everyone can grow and get more visibility. So through Protect, this allows us to take that reporting that we have, all the detailed reports, and put them in the form of requirements documents, simple instructions for teams of engineers to be able to say, okay, we know that we're testing already for security issues on our property. We know we're testing already for performance issues. how can we now incorporate and better collaborate with our SEO brethren to increase site performance and all look good at the end of the day? This is a place where taking all these types of reports, the things that we've covered in today's conversation, and setting them as a simple threshold that can be measured as different releases are happening in pre-production, and understand changes in pre-production and quickly addressing those changes before they spike or before they go live consistently. And rather than addressing it, something that could have been an early fix in the dev cycle is now a issue that a CMO or a CEO is asking our team, why we saw this amount of loss in traffic, why we dropped in visibility, why did this dev project cost us so much extra in fixes when it could have been addressed early. Now, this conversation that we're speaking to is something that SEOs, I think, across the globe have challenges with, but a great way to kind of get SEOs and the devs and engineers to help collaborate is also by creating opportunities to find maybe proprietary things to test for outside of the standard SEO reporting. Using our custom extractions and being able to build in tests that are maybe specific to all teams, things that, like in the pharmaceutical industry, such as having a important safety information label on each and every page of the website, is something that will not only serve SEOs and developers, but it's also going to be a win for compliance. Or being able to check on the inventory amount on certain PDP pages and e-commerce sites. These are things that can be tested for and serve all stakeholders who work with the web property. So using this feature and content releases is a great way to, I think, look at SEO in 2024 to focus on a more proactive strategy versus just using the standard crawl and check methodology. Because as we know, new releases are always going to happen. There's always going to be things that go funky on a website. So the more that we can mitigate and using features like Lumar's Protect, this can save so much time and effort, both pre-production and post-production. So I want to thank everyone for hopping on today's webinar. We have one last poll question. I'm going to hand it over to Josh for that.
Thanks, Matt and Josh. Yeah, last poll question to close this out. Would you like to book a demo of Lumar to see some of these cool things in action? If you're an existing client and you want to see some of these things in action, feel free to reach out to either your customer success manager, if you know who that is, or reach out to support@lumar.io. We'd be happy to help make sure you get what you're looking for. We had a few more questions come through that just because we're at time, we're not going to be able to answer. So again, you can reach out to the support@lumar.io if there's more that you're looking to learn. Matt, if we can go just 2 slides forward, please. And then we'll wrap up here. Yep. So you can use that QR code at any point to request a demo of the platform. Also, make sure to check out our blog, lumar.io/blog, for lots of written content, recordings, information around the tool, product updates, all that good stuff. And then make sure to block off some time on the 8th of February, as we'll be doing our next webinar with 2 folks from Lumar, Jeremy, one of our solutions consultants, and Chris Spann, one of our senior technical SEOs on the professional services team. They'll be talking about flexible crawling SEO strategies for efficiency and efficacy. Thanks so much for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day wherever you are. Take care.
Thanks, guys.